Good morning, everybody. My name is Pierson Geyer. I'm from Agriberry Farm. We're a farm in Hanover County, which is just a little bit north of here, about 25 minutes north of Richmond. Agriberry is the Geyer family farm. We planted in 2009. We rented 10 acres starting off then from a grain farmer up the road from us. 5 acres of blackberries, 4 acres of red raspberries, and a small selection of purple and black raspberries. I'll be focusing on blackberries predominantly with my talk today, but if you have questions regarding other bramble things, purple raspberries, black raspberries, or red raspberries at the end, I can do my best to field those as well. Our primary market venue is a CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's essentially a subscription service for fruit. And we also do lots of direct marketing sales. Those are certainly our two primary outlets. We established one of the first nearly all fruit CSAs nationwide in 2009 when we started up. And we also do some wholesale and value-added production, largely during peak season and off-season. Peak season for the wholesale, off-season for the value-added. During my talk today, I'll be going over some production information. A swath of it had been covered by Alejandra's presentation as well, so I'll probably gloss over those little bits. But certainly if you have questions, feel free to ask. And then we'll talk about some of our marketing techniques as well. So first up, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our planting and how to establish a planting. We use trickle irrigation and plastic row covers. The trickle irrigation line runs down the middle when you set up your planting. And definitely in Virginia heat, you need irrigation on your bramble fruit. We run about 8 hours a day during the summer every day, full-on irrigation for the blackberries, making sure they're getting plenty of water. If they're not well hydrated, they definitely suffer fruit quality, plant quality, everything. I recommend trickle irrigation because it really keeps the water in there and it's more manageable. If you needed to do overhead, that could be something you could look into, but I really recommend the trickle. And then the plastic row covers, you can see, we'll get a picture there in a second, we'll zoom in on that. But those are largely for weed control. So it's very similar to if you've ever done strawberries with row covers, similar setup. But you'll want to be very careful with the plastic because any holes or anything like that in it, and you'll get weeds coming right up through. So keeping the weeds controlled and just having the little slots for the plants is really important. You can use landscaping cloth as well. We've seen a couple of different people do that. Like Alejandra mentioned, if you plant in the spring for floricane fruiting varieties, you're going to get your first crop the following summer. So you're going to want to plant April or so, get it in then, and then look for your first fruit the following year. We like to get tissue culture, verified virus-free material. You can get bare root material, but certainly do your research on your nursery and look around a little bit, do some comparisons so you know you're getting good plant material, because that's really important when you're establishing a blackberry planting. These things can go. I know of plantings that are 20 plus years old, and you're certainly going to be in a time investment there. So if you start off with bad plant material, then you're starting off on the wrong fit. So check on that. As far as our trellis systems, we use a T-type trellis for most of our trellis. That's this right here. You have rebar posts with 2 cross arms, one at about 5.5 feet, 6 feet, the other at about 3 feet. As you can see, I have a little, there we go. So you want all of your fruit essentially to bear in this zone when you're doing your pruning so that it's very easily accessible for all your pickers. You don't really want any fruit too high because then no one can pick it and no one can get to it. It's also exposed to the sun a little bit more then, and blackberries are very sensitive to sun damage, so you want to keep them safe in their foliage. And you can see down here the plastic row covers that I was talking about we use. And the T-trellis is the vast majority of our planting, but we also use a little bit of the rotating cross-arm trellis. It works particularly well with a variety Alejandra mentioned, Apache. One of the sort of cons to that variety is that it has white droops very easily, which happen with sun exposure. The rotating cross-arm trellis allows you to shield your fruit a little bit better with some more foliage, so then you can avoid some of that sun exposure, keep that variety a little bit better. I'll give some pictures here. So this is the rotating crossarm system in its upright position. You'll want to prune all of your canes essentially along a plane, and then this arm on the left-hand side here rotates down in the winter, and this is what it looks like in the down position. One of the really exciting things about this trellis system is that it provides an alternate method for winter preservation. So if you're familiar with doing row covers with strawberries, you can also do row covers on your blackberries if you're dealing with particularly cold winters. Fortunately, we rarely go under 0 here in Virginia, but if anyone's from a little bit further north, or if we continue to get harsher and harsher winters, as it seems like the past 2 years have, then it might be something to look into. But you can row cover and protect them from a little bit of cold. And then the other really cool thing about this system, so when you lean these over, you want to do this before bloom and leave this in this position for when bloom's getting started. And all of your flowers are going to go up towards the sun because that's what they're interested in, is that sunlight, that energy. So they're all going to produce on this top plane here. Once they've all shot and started to flower, then you can put this trellis back up, and 95% of your fruit is all on one side of the trellis, and it's all hanging down, really accessible. The trellis leans at about, there's like a 15-degree angle or so past 90. So that's where you're getting that shade that I was talking about. If you plant this in the correct east-west orientation, all of your plant material is going to defend your fruit from over sunlight, and you're also going to be able to pick it very easily. You send one person down the row. You want to have someone with a little bit of height on them for this system, but it's really easy picking. Downsides, it's a lot of upkeep, particularly in the spring. You're out there in the field lots of time during April and May, during primocane time, sort of establishing your primocanes. So if you don't have a lot of help during that time, it's sort of a tough, tough installation. But if you can make it work, then it has good rewards, good returns. Just sort of a rundown on yearly maintenance. Alejandra hit a lot of this, but just sort of showcasing that blackberries can have year-round labor for a small crew. Lots of challenges in the farming community with labor, having year-round labor for staff and that sort of thing. So if you have a moderate-sized crew, you can have blackberry work throughout most of the year. Starting in the fall, you get rid of all your old floricanes. Then the winter, you'll do your pruning and get that ready for the following year. Spring, you go through and do tipping. Alejandra mentioned the typical dominance, where you go through and take the tops off of all the canes. That allows them to then branch out instead of growing straight up. And then summer is really your big harvest season. If anyone has further questions about our schedule and that sort of thing, I'll be happy to field those at the end as well. While you're in harvest season, I wanted to dwell on this a little bit, just sort of some of the systems we use. In terms of materials, you want to make sure you're prepared. So this is an example of us in the field. That's me picking some blackberries. I think those are natchez, yeah. So you'll see down here, we use picking stands. They're a tripod system with a stake on the singular piece and then two legs on the other end. That stake locks into the ground, so it stops it from falling over, or tries to stop it. Sometimes people can still be careless. You'll want to, whatever picking containers you have, you want to make sure they fit well into your picking stand. We harvest into 1-pint containers, and we have 12 1-pint containers in a flat. And this cardboard box here is what we take to market, what we send to distributors, that sort of thing. That's sort of our staple. And then you'll also, when you're going through and picking, you're going to want a space for all of your seconds fruit, your jam quality fruit, anything that the birds have gotten at, anything that has had sun damage already, anything, any rough berries. You guys know plenty about that. So having a space for that is really important, having a place to sort that into, because when you're harvesting, you want to handle the fruit as little as possible, since it is really fragile. So you don't really want to do any post-harvest sorting. You want to be doing it right on the spot. Next, I wanted to touch briefly on labor. We use a pretty unique labor system. When my mom started this in 2009, she had a social mission in mind, as well as a business mission to engage and employ as many first-time workers as possible. She felt that growing up, the experience of going out on your grandparents' farm and working over the summers was really formative to her and formative to much of that generation, and it's been slowly petering out in my generation. There's less engagement with agriculture. There's less, people aren't engaging in their food systems as much. And it's also tough for young people to get a job right now in the economic situation. Lots of times it's tough for a 16-year-old with no work experience to get their foot in the door really anywhere if they're just looking for a summer job or something to do. So we sort of put those two ideas together, and the vast majority of our workers are all high school and college students. Timing-wise, it works out great. That's always been sort of the idea behind the school system schedule, as well as when it lets out. During the summer, you have farm harvest, so all the kids are out during the summer. You can recruit from them. We try to hit a couple of job fairs, a couple of classrooms, get in front of environmental science classrooms, biology classrooms, horticulture classrooms, that sort of thing, and directly engage with the students, let them know about the opportunity. So it provides a really good story as well. You can bring this to market and tell your customers and tell your CSA members that their business is supporting the local economy, the local youth, getting them involved in agriculture. So it really makes a nice story to bring to market and talk to people about. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, though. A 15-year-old picking blackberries is not going to be quite as productive as a seasoned veteran who's been harvesting fruit for 10 years of their life, and they're here to do a job. So lots of times it can be a challenge to motivate the young people. I have my master's in education, so I worked with young people during my education, and so I have some experience working with them, and I've tried to bring that into the field, and so that's been working out pretty well. Here's a picture of our crew. Oh, no, maybe not. Come back. There we go. This is last season's crew, so pretty fun group. We usually have about 40 kids on staff, with 30 in at a time on peak days. We start off with about a dozen or so college students in May, try to get them a little bit of experience, a little bit of leadership, so that when the high school students start up, there's someone to look up to. We can have a little bit of leadership established there. And then the high schoolers usually get out around the second week of June, which is right when blackberries are gearing up to get going. So that's when we can really bring them all in and get them rolling. And up next, I just wanted to touch on the varieties that we have. It's mostly Arkansas varieties, but we do have a bit of a mix. These are those Natchez, those gigantic berries that Alejandro was talking about. They really are huge. So if you have the opportunity to grow Natchez, it is an excellent berry to plant in the area. It's currently our first variety that comes in, typically early June, around June 10th or so for us in Hanover. Pretty good yield, very large fruit, excellent flavor. It's a really good way to start off the season in the direct market space. People see these gigantic blackberries, you just sample a couple of them to them, and you start selling blackberries like crazy. They're just flying off the shelf. Couple of cons with this. They can over yield if you don't prune them hard enough. This plant really likes to make fruit, and if you don't prune it back well enough, it will devote more energy to making fruit than it will establishing its prime McCain crop for the following year. So you want to be careful about how much you leave, because if you leave too many canes, you get a really great crop this year and then next to nothing the following year. So you want to sort of use a balance there. It also, we noted, was sort of susceptible to winter damage. It is one of the early bloomers. So if you have a late spring frost, they can hit that bloom and sort of be an issue there. So just something to note. Next up is Ouachita. Like Alejandro mentioned, it's very good for shipping. It's got uniform size, erect canes, good flavor, good yield. So if you're looking more towards the wholesale side of things, looking more towards packaging and shipping, less towards direct market, absolutely have Ouachita in your lineup. It fits right into a clamshell very easily, unlike those gigantic Natchez. So it can fill up your shipping containers very well. I will note it's a very erect variety, and if you don't tip it early enough, then all of the laterals will produce up at the top, right in the sunlight, right, getting plenty of sunburn. So you want to be really conscious of this during the spring when you're doing your tipping. You want to do sort of a mid-tip and let those laterals come up, and then you're going to get fruit more in the middle. You don't want to wait too late to tip this guy. We still mess around with the thorny varieties. I picked a thorn out of my hand earlier this morning from doing pruning yesterday. There are a couple advantages to them. They're gigantic and delicious, both Kiowa and Chickasaw that we have. Very easy to sell in a direct market space. You have them on the table. They just fly right off the table. People really love them. They're astonished to see berries that size. And Chickasaw especially has really excellent flavor. The cons are very obvious with thorny fruit is that the plant matter is thorny. So it's difficult to get people to pick, especially on the interior. It's tough to get people to reach their hands in there. I'm always telling my workers to be brave when they're picking the thorny fruit, but it doesn't always land. Not only that, but the thorns can cause some damage as well when you're doing your pruning. Lots of times when you're pruning, you sort of just want to cut the bases and yank a cane out. If you do that with thorny plants, the thorns will scrape against the plant material of the other thorns and expose a lot of that plant matter, and then that leads to easier disease. Anytime you have open wounds on a plant, it's much easier for that plant to get diseased. So these thorns certainly can be a challenge. Certainly take those with a grain of salt. But the fruit itself is excellent. It's just dealing with all the headaches around it. We have two sort of midsummer varieties, Triple Crown and Apache. I mentioned most of my information about Apache during my RCA bit. Triple Crown is a mid to late season variety, more moderate size. As you sort of get on into later July and August, your size will taper off in our variety selections. Natchez, Chickasaw, early on, you're getting those big honkin' berries, but later on it starts to get a little bit smaller. Still really good yield on Triple Crown though. We found that our planting particularly is susceptible to cane blight in terms of disease. I don't know if that's something that other people have experienced, but it's something that we certainly noticed with it. But I like the variety a lot in terms of flavor and yield. And Chester is what closes out our floricane season. Very high yielding variety. Most of our planting is planted at 3-foot spacing between plants. Chester is planted at 6-foot spacing because each plant base is so vigorous. You'll get very vigorous plant material. It's really big and woody and barky. Takes up a lot of space. And it makes the berries. Man, we're picking Chester all of August. By the time we get into the first week of September or so, my whole crew is tired of them. I'm tired of them, and they keep on coming. They just keep rolling. They are a smaller berry. They're a little bit smaller. They're only, say, about nickel size or so. You're not really finding huge fruit in there at all. And the flavor is moderate. I found that I like Chester a little bit less, and I don't think that's just because I'm tired of blackberries by the time I've gotten to September. I just find the flavor's not quite as much there, but we have found that they're a really good value-added variety. So if you're getting to the end of the season, sales are sort of tough in terms of blackberries. People are sort of all satisfied with them, and it's tough to push them. Save these Chesters for your jam, for your pies, for whatever processing you're going to do, because we found their flavor profile really is outstanding if you're doing any value-added stuff. And we have messed around with some of the primocane bearing. We have Primark 45 planted. We've had those for a couple of years. Obviously, the big pro is you have fruit in September and October. So when there's no real supply and still plenty of demand for berries, it's easy to harvest and sell them. We actually harvest our Primarks into half-pint containers, so half size, and still have the same price for them at market and never not sell out. They always sell out at market just because people are so happy to have them. Really good flavor. They're not incredible yielders on their primocane side, but it's still the fact that you can have such a markup on them makes it close to worth it. And we found for us they're a very boom-bust variety in terms of when they're producing. So we'll get 2 or 3 pretty solid pickings out of them sort of during September, and as it cools off, they're still making flowers. When we hit first frost, we still have flowers on the canes that get frozen out, but it's just the yield will taper off as you cool off throughout the winter. And if you see 32, these things are out. It is not like a soft freeze situation. They are very sensitive to cold. So as soon as you get down right near freezing, they are done. All right. And that's it on production. Now we're going to move into a little bit about marketing. So I mentioned our CSA, that's sort of our flagship sales model, stands for Community Supported Agriculture. Essentially the way this works, or how many people in here have tried doing a CSA? Mess around with it a little bit. How many people have heard of it? Okay, a few more. All right, so I'll just sort of touch on that. Essentially the idea is at the beginning of the year, a member will sign up for your farm CSA. They pay one flat rate that will cover whatever season you dictate. We have 2 seasons. We have a 20-week summer season and then a 5-week fall extension season that we do. Once they sign up for the season, they pay for it all up front. So lots of times in farming, you run into a big challenge with the way your cash flow works. You get all your money during the summer during harvest, and then you put it back into planting, and that can be fall and spring, but you don't always have decent cash flow for labor or for production or for whatever you need money for between planting until harvest, right? Things can be a little tight then. This is a really great opportunity to sort of get your coffers going and have some excess money then to get you through into when you have harvest and when you're recouping all of your expenses and that sort of thing. It allows you to, there's a planning component to it, but if you do that well, it allows you to utilize excess fruit pretty easily. Let's say there's a week where you unexpectedly have way more blackberries than you expected. The way our share is set up is you get 6 units of fruit. So there's 3 here, here's a unit of peaches, and 2 different units of apples, right? But if we had a week where we were going crazy on blackberries, we'd maybe take a unit of apples out and throw an extra blackberry unit in there. So it allows you to handle volume a little bit and a guaranteed sales capacity. If you go to market with extra fruit, you don't really know whether or not it'll sell. But if it's in your CSA, you know how to count how many of those units are going off the table, so you can regulate your volume a little bit. We also, for us, and you can do this either way, but we index other farms and partner with other farms and have their fruits involved in our offering in our CSA as well. We find our members really like to have a lot of variety in what's going on, and they also like to hear about farms in the local area, what other people are doing. So we reach out and look for other varieties. We'll do apples from the Shenandoah area up near Charlottesville, and peaches as well. We have some of our own peaches, but we will offer a variety of fruit, and that really seems to please the consumer. They don't want blackberries all the time or raspberries all the time. They want to have a mixture going on. And you also really want to inform your consumer. Your members, you want to develop a relationship with them. They spend a good deal of money at the beginning of the year, and they see you every week. They're always coming and interacting with, in theory, the same person. So you want to have a rapport with this person. You want them to feel connected to the farm. They're doing this to support your farm and support you through the season, as well as to get a variety of fruit. So making it more of a personal connection really will help in developing these as returning customers, because if you can get them to come back the following year, that's a whole another season worth of sales that you've made in one instance. So have that personal relationship with your consumers. Direct marketing is our other primary market venue. That's essentially selling directly to a consumer. We're not going through a distributor. We're not going through any wholesaler or anything. You're taking things right to market, or if you have a retail station, then that's also direct marketing. We do all of our 99% of our sales at farmers markets. We don't have anyone come to our farm. We take it all to them. So we find that works out pretty well, especially with the current sort of culture around farmers markets. They're very in vogue right now, so to speak. People are excited about farmers markets. They want to go do it as an activity. They want to tell their friends, oh, we went to the market this morning. So getting on that hype and being involved in a market space is really recommended. And especially with the varieties that we're growing, Alejandro mentioned that some of them, you'll want to get them that shiny black, and that's for shipping, and then that dull black is softer but sweeter. If you can get those dull black into direct market space, they're a really easy sell. But you need to get them into the market space quickly. Nothing in our cooler is there longer than 4 days tops in terms of harvest. Most stuff is picked a day or two ahead of time of when it's going out. So Having a quick turnaround lets you have that really good flavor and lets you sell that softer fruit, but you really need to make sure you're on it in terms of getting it out to the consumer. There's a little bit of overhead involved in direct marketing. If you have a retail space, whatever cost is associated with that, and if you're taking things to a market, you need to get sales props. We'll zoom in. This is a market in Spotsylvania, in Fredericksburg. And we also use the markets as a CSA pickup point. So most of our markets and all of our pickup points sort of do double duty. We'll have members come and they can get their share for the week. And then we also have member perks. They can get a discount on other fruit if they want to buy a la carte for what's there. And then we have all the a la carte items available for the general consumer. Yeah, that's most of direct marketing, but you do need to keep in mind, transportation costs, staffing costs, all your props and everything. You want to have a canopy. We like to have good branding on our canopies as well as just in general. If people can associate you with some sort of specific thing in a farmer's market, with us it's our color purple. We have purple tents or white tents with purple font, and whenever you're at a market you can find the purple tent. You can go right to Agriberry. People can identify you through your brand. If you just sort of have the generic blue tent that everyone is very used to, it's easier to get lost in the crowd. So having something to stand out to really showcase that you're there is recommended in the direct market space. And then finally, value-added marketing. So using your cosmetically challenged fruit well. So I mentioned this earlier, when you're picking, you want to be sectioning off all your damaged fruit. It's still worth money. Don't discard that, especially with the current spotted wing Drosophila situation going on. Don't just send that to the ground. You want to get it out of the field and turn it around, make some money for you. We have a commercial kitchen on site. We do lots of jams and jellies there. We've also done experimenting with some fruit leathers. We dry out apple rings and sell those in little bags at market. So people are excited to see new ideas or even revitalize old ideas at market, and but there are markets that go year round now. So if you have material to sell there, like all these jams and everything, then you can keep a cash flow going throughout the year. If you don't have access to a commercial kitchen, look into your county, see if there is a county cannery or a commercial kitchen available. There's one in Hanover County. I know there's plenty around, so certainly check into whatever your local extension can tell you about that, and see if there's something available. They're very moderately priced. People there are typically very helpful, so it's not a difficult challenge to get in there and start getting some jams and jellies made and sent off to market. So that's most of the production and marketing. I did want to touch again on something Reza Rafi's mentioned a couple times, and that's the NARVA conference is coming here next year. It should be right around this time next year. I'm a board member, and I'm the board member that represents the Virginia region as well as sort of a mid-Atlantic swath inwards. But anyone, if you have any questions about either NARVA or about blackberries and raspberries, if you want to know what services NARVA has that can help you with, or if you have questions that you need help with, feel free to get in contact with me. I'll be around all day. I have plenty of cards I can give you guys if you're interested in starting conversation about that. And certainly check out NARVA's website and look forward to next year. It's going to be a conference right here at home. The resources that they offer at their conferences are incredible. I've been going since I've been involved professionally in our farm, as well as when I was younger, just for fun. But they have excellent professional resources and development. So if you're available next year, I absolutely recommend attending that conference.